On the 19th of November 1989, Margaret Thatcher was British Prime Minister. The UK #1 single was All Around the World by Lisa Stansfield, and the top film at the UK cinema box office that week was Shirley Valentine. And I was a 15-year-old schoolboy living in the army garrison town of Colchester in Essex, about 50 miles northeast of London. It was a Saturday, and I'd been into the town and was walking home by my usual route. Living on Layer Road, about a mile from the town centre, I usually took a shortcut through the garrison, the last leg of the shortcut through the Army Married Quarters, where the non-commissioned officers lived in army houses with their families. It was not guarded in any way, and completely open to access by the public. Indeed, the army was completely integrated into the life of the town. I walked down Messines Road, cut across Ine Road, passing by a car parked in a parking bay, through the playground and emerged onto Layer Road and walked the few hundred yards on to my house. In spite of the Peace of Colchester, a war inside the UK was raging in 1989 and had been for a long time. The Troubles in Northern Ireland. A lot of the soldiers stationed in Colchester had served in Northern Ireland, but Colchester seemed very far away from all that. The car that I'd walked past on Ine Road on my way home, a Volkswagen Golf, belonged to a soldier living in one of the houses nearby. Not long after I arrived home, there was the most tremendous explosion. The windows in the house literally shook, and people came out of their homes to stand in their drives or in their front gardens, staring at a plume of black smoke rising from behind some tall fir trees that marked the boundary of the Army Married Quarters that I had just passed through. I jumped on my bike and quickly cycled to as close as I could get to the disturbance. Layer Road was strewn with small pieces of debris and one or two large chunks of the front end of a car. I managed to see a little of what was happening on Ine Road. A car was burning fiercely. What I was witnessing was an act of terrorism. That car that I had walked past earlier had just blown up. 2 unidentified men had planted a bomb on the car, determined to kill its owner, a British soldier. Colchester had just fallen victim to an attack by the Irish Republican Army, or the IRA. But it took quite a long time before we learned the full story of what had happened on that Saturday morning. With hindsight, an IRA active service unit, or units, was operating on the British mainland during late 1989, planting bombs all over the place. On the 22nd of September, the news had been full of the tragic story, the IRA's bombing of the Royal Marines School of Music at Deal in Kent. 11 Royal Marines bandsmen had been tragically killed. On the 15th of November, just a few days before the attack on Colchester, a car bomb had been found and defused in Kensington in London. Just a few hours after the Colchester bomb, a landmine was remotely detonated in Northern Ireland itself, at Mayo Bridge, 30 miles south of Belfast, destroying a passing British Army vehicle and killing 3 soldiers from the 3rd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment. Long before 9/11, or the threat of Islamic terrorism, the British had lived with IRA bombs. It was just part of the background of growing up in Thatcher's Britain. Every so often there would be one in London or somewhere outside of Northern Ireland. They even tried to assassinate Thatcher and very nearly succeeded when they bombed the Brighton Hotel during the Conservative Party conference held there. But as I said, it was all background clutter to us kids and teenagers. But then the Troubles came to my town in the most visceral way. For Staff Sergeant Andy Mudd, a 33-year-old senior NCO, Saturday 19th of November 1989 would change his life forever. He and his wife Maggie planned to do some pre-Christmas shopping. They emerged from their house not long after I'd walked past. Mudd, who had served in Northern Ireland, gave his car a cursory once-over, a precaution against bombs. He and his wife got in their Volkswagen Golf, and at 10:23 a.m. Andy switched on the engine, put the car in gear, and started to reverse out of the parking bay on Ine Road when there was a tremendous explosion and flames. Mudd knew instantly that a bomb had gone off, and he also realized that his right leg was gone and he was on fire. Within a few seconds, a brave off-duty soldier had pulled both him and his wife from the wrecked vehicle, while another soldier, a trained medic, did what he could for Mudd, who was critically injured. Within a few minutes, an ambulance was at the scene, followed by more emergency vehicles and more soldiers arriving, and the Mudds were taken to Colchester General Hospital for emergency treatment. Maggie wasn't badly injured, suffering lacerations from flying glass, particularly to her face, but Andy Mudd was touch and go. His right leg had been blown off, and he had lost 2 of the fingers on his right hand, and tragically, surgeons could not save his left leg, which was amputated. The IRA had planted the bomb under the right front wheel arch of Mudd's car. As in Britain, we drive on the left and the driver sits on the right of the car. Therefore, Mudd took most of the blast, but by some kind of miracle wasn't killed outright. The bomb was a staple of the 1980s IRA, 3 pounds, or 1.5 kilograms of Semtex plastic explosive packed into a plastic lunchbox and fitted with a homemade mercury tilt switch. The moment Mudd moved the car, the detonator was triggered. IRA Semtex came from Libya, whose dictator, Colonel Gaddafi, had imported 700 tons between 1975 and 1981 from the Czechoslovak manufacturer. It was much favoured by terrorists in the 1980s, as Semtex at the time could not be easily detected. It had a very similar explosive power to C4, but unlike C4, it is red or brick orange in colour. Semtex had become well known to the British public as, a year earlier, Libyan Semtex had been smuggled aboard a Boeing 747 airliner, probably on the orders of the Libyan authorities. The plane was Pan Am Flight 103, which had been destroyed over Lockerbie in Scotland. Just 120 ounces or 340 grams of plastic explosive had caused the jet to break up in mid-air, killing all 259 passengers and crew on board and 11 people on the ground in Scotland. So did the police catch the people responsible for the Colchester car bombing? The answer is no, despite 7,000 interviews and also 3,000 telephone call-ins with information. My parents were interviewed several times in our home by special branch detectives from London after my mother reported to the police seeing 2 men in a car behaving suspiciously around 7 a.m. on the day of the attack when my mother was walking our dog. The crime remains unsolved. Andy Mudd, with prosthetic legs, continued to serve in the army until 1996. In 1998, after a very long legal fight, he was finally awarded £825,000 in compensation for his atrocious injuries. He became a trustee of the British Limbless Ex-Servicemen's Association. Fortunately, nothing else like the 1989 bombing has occurred in Colchester since, which remains one of Britain's biggest army garrisons to the present day. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.